Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Software Project. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about my mental health journey, how I went from someone who did not grow up in a family that valued mental health to someone that I owe everything to my mental health journey, and just some takeaways for anyone who is a little bit new to this area. And again, I do think that we're all kind of work in progress. Nobody is perfect. And we are doing the best with what we were given. So let me start with the time that I noticed that I was seriously depressed. Like a lot of moms, postpartum depression was really detrimental, and it was actually really, in fact, affecting me. Like a lot of moms, postpartum depression was definitely impacting the quality of my life. However, I didn't really notice it right away. I think like a lot of us who didn't grow up in a family that value mental health, we even talk about it. We think that people only go to therapists because they are quote unquote crazy, or if they need a medication, then they're not normal. And I was one of those people. And when, after I gave birth to my daughter, you had the nurse, or I was in a postpartum center at the time for about 20 some days. And you had nurses coming in, and it was like a formality where they asked me, "Oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling?" And to be honest, I think I don't really think anyone would give a true, honest answer. And I said I think I gave her like a 7. It was like, "Oh, I'm fine, but I'm tired." And again, like I had a C-section, so I was recovering. But I knew I was lying because there was so much of me that was shifting and changing, and I didn't really know what to do with the amount of grief and guilt, and I was just simply depressed. And it got worse when I went home because my mom at the time, we planned it that she would take care of me, help me to cook and make food so that I could be healthy and produce milk and take care of my daughter. But that did not happen because my mom was hospitalized the second day I went home. And my dad was just he sort of lost himself a little bit. So no one was really looking at me or looking at my baby at the time with joy. Everyone was running around like crazy. So we planned that my parents would help me, but they were out. Obviously my mom was in the hospital. My dad had to go with her and be with her. And whenever he comes home, he would just pack things up for her and then leave again. And at the time, my ex, he helped during the nights, but to be honest, I don't quite remember how much support that I got, but I just remember this complete loneliness and how I was in my house alone most of the time. I didn't even want it to open the window. So my house was dark for 2 whole weeks. And I remember my mom had 2 cats, and she was the one that takes care of them. And they were in the house with me as well. And they didn't know how to deal with my baby. They were really, really scared. And I did not really know how to introduce them to the baby because I could barely move. And I was just so depressed that I remember I couldn't even clean their litter box. So that memory itself, if I could name a color, it would be gray. That's it, like just gray. I was really depressed, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to. And I think one of the things about growing up in family that did not value mental health, would never talked about mental health, is that you feel absolutely guilty of feeling that way. You feel so ashamed I just felt like I was a horrible mom. I was not at all prepared for that, and I was supposed to be glowing and happy and joyful, but that's not what I experienced at all. And I remember specifically one day that my second mom, so I usually call her Gama, and that means in my culture, it's like a second mom. So similar to godmother, but it was not religious. And she called me and to see how I was doing. But really, it quickly went into, she's like, did you have postpartum depression? Don't have it. Don't think about it. And that, her word stays with me so much because I was shocked and I was frustrated because then I felt even more ashamed of it or guilty of it. And I was very polite to her. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm fine. And after I hung up the phone, that stayed with me. Now, that period of dark time kind of stayed for about a few more months. My mom came home from the hospital. We also had to hire a healthcare professional to take care of her specifically. And my entire house was just was a bit upside down. Everyone just not themselves. And eventually, after a few months, I think things started to feel a little bit normal again. But I would say from that point on, in the next 2 years, I was in depression. I was really not myself. I just felt like this is not what I imagined. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I was kind of just floating. I was kind of floating and I just was doing what I could do to get through the day. And then I decided to do teaching for part-time. So before then I was already teaching at a cram school. And I decided to go back just for part-time, just for like a couple days a week, for a few hours a day. And I felt better then. But again, I still didn't seek help. But I felt better because I had distraction. I had some sort of different focus and I was interacting with other people and other adults. So that definitely helped. But again, I I suppressed all that emotion. I never processed them fully. I still carry that guilt and shame throughout. And when I was 35, my grandmother passed away, and I really decided to just take a really good look at my life. At the time, my daughter was about 4 years old. She was a little bit, she was a toddler, but things got slightly easier. And I decided to again, like to go back for more work. But I actually started to hear about coaching because at the time, I think therapy to me is still a very foreign idea. And I was still a little bit scared of the concept. But coaching to me sounds a little bit more approachable. So I started to dig a little bit. I went to a workshop. I contacted the person that ran the workshop, and she introduced me to ICA, International Coaching Academy. And I just started taking classes. I got myself enrolled in a program. I started taking classes. And that's really when because I opened myself up to a completely different sort of pattern, a different insight. I finally gained the courage to really look at my marriage, and my marriage was definitely one of the biggest issue that I had. And during that time, I also had the courage to contact a therapist that was introduced by my friend. I didn't go that consistently, but I remember I probably went for like 5 sessions total. just to really help me to open myself up to the idea of divorce. I was feeling so trapped and I didn't really know how to talk to my ex at the time on how to, like, it wasn't working. Like, I was so afraid to even say, this is not working and I can't pretend anymore. So that happened. And also, I took my ex and I asked him if we could go to couples counseling. So we did that. 2 sessions. Again, this is very different for everyone. But from my experience, I went for 2 sessions and was enough information for me to know that the marriage really did not work. Like how he answered the question and how when he talked about me, why he wanted to marry me, those answers that he gave to the therapist, it was eye-opening for me. And I was like, I'm done. That was enough information for me. So was it useful? Yes, in a way, because it definitely gave me enough information and determination to end the marriage. So after that, got my divorce and I had my business. Then I just kind of went full in with my business because I wanted to really start to make a living for myself and regain that confidence. And during that time, I also was in a very not so great relationship because I was not in a very solid ground. So I jumped into a relationship that it was not good for me. So those like 4 years was still kind of blurry to me because it was not the greatest, but I was kind of just really focusing on my career. I was trying different things. I was trying recording online classes, doing podcasts, acting as trainers and consultant. I basically really focused my life there. And yeah, I mean, it definitely grew, but it wasn't an overnight thing. I worked really, really, really hard. I worked basically 7 days a week. Then the next thing that really drove me into to seek help to take care of myself was when I had to go to court for the custody battle. And for anyone had to do that, it was an extreme ego death for me. And it was so hard because there was so much in me that so many traumas that just completely got resurfaced. And again, all those emotion that I suppressed down got just exposed. And I was spending some time, during those years, I had a really good friend and I would tell him my fears and what I went through, and I was asking him for advice, and I got really used to that. But at some point, he really couldn't help me anymore. And I knew that. And I knew that if I continued that pattern, I would hurt the friendship even more because I was putting that pressure on him. And I know a lot of it's because my own anxiety, and I had to face it myself. So, so he actually told me, I think you need to go seek help. And at the time, of course, I was unhappy, but I also knew that, yeah, it's time, which is what I did. And man, I think the first session for me, it was really hard because I went into the first session with so many shields on. I still wanted to present my way in like this as a performance. And I'm pretty sure the therapist saw right through me, but I stuck with it. I even asked her, like, do I really have to come back every week? That seems like a lot of time spending just, I was in my office and I had to come here. Do I really have to invest that time? And she's like, this is really the best for me. So I did that for 2.5 years. I did not stop. I rarely took any break unless I had to go to like any business trip. But I went every single week, including birthdays, holidays. Yeah, so that lasted for about 2 years and a half. I finally was able to ask my therapist, hey, I think this year I can be on my own. I think I've gained enough tools. And she agreed. Also, at the same time, I'll be very honest, I was also thinking about finances and I felt like that was something I do have to save. But I think if anyone, if you do have the means, I think regular therapy session is seriously, it's the best thing ever because it just keeps you in check. And she's always asking me the question that I needed to ask myself, but I didn't. And when I went in, it was because my anxiety of surrounding the court case, but it quickly went into my childhood, my patterns with my parents, and also my other relationship as well. And this year, when we are about to end the whole entire session, she asked me, what are your quick takeaway? And I told her, yeah, it was, I learned a lot and I felt like my career is stronger. My bond with my daughter is stronger than ever. And after I talked about my takeaways, she looked at me and said, you never even mentioned court. Did you notice that? And that's really when I know that I wouldn't say successful, but I'm shifted. Like I am healed in a way that I have the proper tools now to deal with life situations. And I always know that if I need her again, or if I need a therapist again, I can always go back. But that was a turning moment. That was, me patting myself in my back and go, good job. Good job, Sherry. Now, and I remember I told you guys about how my second mom was telling me, don't have postpartum depression. Now, when I think back to what she said, I noticed one thing is that mental health, it's a right, but it's also a privilege to everyone. For anyone that's able to even go on this path and being able to reflect back and have this the safe space to even feel what they need to feel, it's such a privilege. My second mom, a little context here, she was a single mom by choice. And imagine back in those days, 40-ish years ago, it was not a popular choice. In my culture, it was frowned upon and she was criticized and by her peers, her friend, her family even. And she had to work her butt off. She did not come from a wealthy family. She really had to work so hard every single day to provide for her son. There was no other support, nothing. So when I think back, I knew she had depression, but she never even had the time to even think about mental health because she was on that survival mode. And when you're on that survival mode for so long, it's all about doing harder, trying again. Feeling soft feels so risky and dangerous. So when we're in a place where we can feel softness again, what a privilege. And that means you are on the way to heal and things has shifted. So I think everyone, again, I advocate this concept of soft power But what it is that I think a lot of us in the society, especially for women, we run on this masculine energy of doing and performing and support everyone around us, because feeling soft and relaxed felt really dangerous and felt like it's unsafe to feel that way. So I would say this is my really quick call to action for everyone. If any one of us, even people around us that are close to us, is having a really tough time, we also don't need to run into the solution mode where we have to like fix them, providing advice. Let's just hold space so that they get to feel soft. They get to feel safe, to feel, to cry, to just sit there. And I think that can do so much good, and that's a gift itself. So I really wish everyone's having a wonderful, wonderful day and happy mental health day, because I think that's every day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.